70% of families lose the wealth that they have built in the second generation, and 90% lose it in the third. So, how do we build and sustain generational wealth? Are we raising financially responsible adults? And have we started to speak to our younger children about saving and money management skills? Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's discussion. My name is Onyi Osunwoke, and I manage the premium banking segment for FCMB. Today, we have two wonderful speakers from KPMG and FCMB trustees, and they will share strategies and plans on how we can start to build wealth and transition it to the next generation. For instance, Alabukum. We all know Alabukum, the medicinal powder. That business has been in existence for over 100 years. The principal promoter has since passed away, and that business is currently being managed by his grandchild, and that is the second generation. So that's really motivating, and we want to understand how we can build that kind of legacy now for our children and their children. Before I go ahead to introduce our guest speaker, let me quickly speak to the rules of engagement for this discussion. We want it to be conversational. We want you to participate and interact. So we'll have some polls come up during the course of the discussion. We urge you to participate and engage. As well as that, please include your questions in the Q&A chat box. That's the Q&A chat box. We will make out time to go through it. And of course, at the end of this discussion, the recording will be sent to participants. So please share your links with friends, families, loved ones. Bring them over because we are about to start. I'll go ahead now to introduce our guest speaker. Her name is Opeyemi Oduole. Opeyemi Oduole trained as a chemical engineer, but she has spent almost 2 decades helping people build wealth and create structures to transfer wealth across generations. Opey started out in private banking operations in Stanbic IBTC, and since then has served in multiple capacities across various organizations. She served as a regional head and business development manager within the private banking business in Stanbic IBTC. She moved on to head privileged banking in Diamond Bank, and she has served as the country head of private banking in Sterling Bank before moving into investment banking, where she served as the head of investment banking sales. Opey Oduole is currently an associate director and the head of family office and private clients for KPMG in Nigeria. At KPMG, Opey is responsible for family businesses, family offices, and ultra high net worth clientele. She is passionate about wealth creation, growth, and effective intergenerational wealth transition. Opey uses her almost 2 decades of work in estate planning, wealth management, and family business succession planning to help people in their emotional journey of putting structures and processes in place around their wealth to ensure that their wealth fulfills their desires for many generations to come. Welcome, Opey, to this discussion. Thank you for honoring our invitation. We're happy to have you. We will post a poll right now. So there's a poll right up. Please respond, please engage.
Okay, can I go ahead to start? Please enable me to share my screen. Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to confirm if you can drop in the chat Q&A chat box. I know it's for Q&A, but we'll use it for 1 or 2 different things. Can you just confirm that you can hear me clearly? I just want to confirm that I can be heard clearly. So if you can drop in the chat box, fantastic. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I can see we have fantastic participants today.
Yes, we do.
Thank you, Onyi, for inviting me, and thank you, FCMB. I would like to thank the leadership of FCMB. I would like to thank Onyi and everyone for giving me the opportunity to serve today and to share of the things that we have seen through research, through data, and through many years of working with wealthy individuals. And relax, sit back and enjoy. It's going to be an amazing, amazing time. You give me a second. I just want to confirm that you can see my screen. Taking it to beginning of the slide.
All right. So we have the poll results out. Do your
Fantastic.
children, yes, do your children live in different jurisdictions from Africa or a different country from Nigeria? 25% say yes, and 75% say no.
Fantastic. And I do like that answer, because it also tells me, thinking now, I wish we had done a demography in terms of age. So we would have an idea of the age range of the participants of the webinar. But it also tells me something very interesting. And I will start with what we have here, which is leaving a family legacy. We're going to have a wonderful time today. We have about 30 minutes to spend together, and it's going to be 30 minutes well spent. And I'm going to be leaving you with some thoughts about things that we have seen through the years. Onyi mentioned Alabukun, but do you know that 90% of the businesses in Africa, forget Nigeria, well, 75% based on research in Africa, 90% across West Africa are family-owned businesses. Well, from the mom and pop shop all the way to the Dangotes. Dangote is a family-owned business. So a lot of the businesses in Africa and in Nigeria are family-owned businesses. And if you check it, probably including yours. So we're talking, but we're not talking only about business. We're talking about your assets, and we're talking about you leaving a legacy. Now, leaving a legacy is more than money. It's your values, it's your culture. And for a lot of times when I talk to people whose children are young, when I mean young, between the ages of 0 and 15, maybe 18, they don't think it's a big deal. But because we've worked with clients over a long period of time, we now see that it is actually more than a big deal. It is a really serious problem. Now, if you are going to leave a legacy, you need to make your mark on this world. That is something that Maya Angelou, a mark that cannot be erased. But it is more than that. It is you making sure that your culture, the right culture, your ethos, your values, the things that you think are important to you are passed from generation to generation. And before we dive right into the slides, I will share a story. I remember sitting in front of a client one day, and he looked at me with tears in his eyes. And he said to me, "Okwe," in my local language, I'm a Yoruba girl, "all these children, they are not coming back. All this work of 40 years, I don't have anybody to give it to." And this that I just said is the reality of a lot of Nigerians by the time they get to a particular age. Now, I would like us to deploy the next poll. Can we just deploy the next poll, Oyin?
Okay, so we have our next poll.
Thank you for answering the poll. While we're getting the answers to the poll, I will move on to my next slide. I don't know, my system is hanging. Apologies. My slides aren't moving at the moment. Okay, there it is. Fantastic. So let's dive right into business. This is the average Nigerian. This picture I have up here is the average Nigerian, and I'll tell you why. In our bid as Nigerians to get our children to live in the countries that we, how will I explain it? To have better life experiences, to do better in life, to work harder, to have that global reach, because we want them to have a better life than we do. Do you know what we do? We send our children abroad. We send them to Harvard. We send them to Yale. We send them to Stanford. Some of them even go from high school And for those that their children are in university now, amongst those on this call, and you can chat and tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe I might be wrong. Maybe people don't send their children to Harvard and Yale and Stanford. Their children are in Covenants. Their children are in other schools. And guess what is happening? And then when the children finish, they say that they want to go and do my master's. I want to go to Oxford. I want to go to, even if it's Ghana, University de Legon in Ghana, right? As in, they go to all these schools. But do you know the implication of this to Africa, not even Nigerian families? The implication is your children do not live with you for a lot of people. And then Japa syndrome has now happened to Nigeria, where a lot of us, thank you very much, I've seen the result of the poll, where a lot of us are, Japa syndrome happens, where a lot of us have our children who were even interested in managing the business or were even interested in Nigeria. Let me digress and share a joke. I have a client that said to me, girls are scam. And I said, how can you say girls are scam? He said, my daughter, we had planned everything. You know, she was supposed to be my CFO. And then her husband said he's relocating. And then she comes to me one day after we have done all this work and says, look, daddy, my husband has given me ultimatum. He said, are you following me or are you staying? And she said, daddy, I have to follow. And because she said, daddy, I have to follow, she has to follow. So all of a sudden, all my plans have been scattered. These girls, and we laughed about it, but at the same time, it was not a joke. It was a big deal to him, right? So this is the reality of a lot of Nigerian families. If you have young children and it is not your reality now, in another few years, it will be, because they will not be living in Nigeria. Even deeper than that, I want you to think about it, is the fact that if your children do not live in Nigeria, what that means is that your grandchildren probably have little, small, we're talking about leaving a legacy, almost zero ties to Nigeria. And then we have the school of thought of those that say, oh, my children have traveled, but I have told them that they must come back. And because I have seen this play out so many times all through the years, I laugh. Because what usually happens is after they do their masters, they say, daddy, let me get a few years of work experience. And then before you know it, getting married to a Sri Lankan, a Chinese, India, we're going to South Africa for a wedding. And before you know it, the child is like, their grandchildren are mixed continent and they don't know anything about Nigeria. Even if they do, they are visitors to Nigeria. This is peculiar to Africa. This, your private wealth, for those that have offshore investments and offshore accounts, your private wealth offshore managers, this they do not really understand because they do not experience it. Because people that are in the middle wealth segment abroad usually do not have their children living in other parts of the world. I just want to take a second to drop. Okay, thank you. I was seeing some very nice comments there. It's like living in other parts of the world, right? So I'm talking to a mixed crowd. I have people whose children are toddlers, but their dream usually is to have their children go to the best universities in the world. I have people in this crowd, I'm sure, whose children are in high school. And their dream is in a few years, you will go to university in America or in Canada or in England or in South Africa or wherever you want to go in the world. I have people here that their children are grown and have finished university and they're thinking of how to send them for masters. I'm sure I have people here too that their children are already abroad and they are categorically sitting in this, or as we say on social media, they are firmly on this table, very firmly on this table. And we will be helping every single one of you. Okay. My slide is once again hanging and I do not know why. But moving on, okay, fantastic. Now, family businesses and family assets. Can you see this story that I'm putting? I want to move this to the side so that you can see it very well. Let me collapse this. Pardon me, I know you can see my screen. Okay. Now, if you look at this picture, I can assure you, this is research done. This is not fancy. This is not somebody trying to scare you. This is real life. Most family assets do not last past the second generation. And I will tell you why. You see, when it comes to, and I'm trying to be as real and as practical and as relatable. I don't want to come and just throw data at you because I work with a consulting firm. This is data pulled globally across the world and proven over time. Very, very few families are the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the very few families, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the Guinness family that have moved assets for 250 years. No. A lot of families, by the third generation, everything has started. And I'll tell you why. Even if you build, I know you are building your business now. If you are a younger business owner on this call, I know that you have been working very hard if you are in the middle age bracket on this call. And I also know that you have done many, many things if you are on the older side or even retired on this call. So you've worked hard, you've bought, some of us own businesses, pardon me. Some of us have assets, you have property, you've been hustling the hustle. Whether you have a career or you are running your business, and all you're thinking, now exchange rate is going through the roof, cost of living has gone up. It's skyrocketing. You go to the stores, what you used to spend how many years ago, you're spending 3 times that. I literally said to somebody, peak milk, retained milk. I said, this is real life. You're talking practical stuff. Was 450 naira, and it's 625 naira. That's about 125% jump in price. And everything has literally gone that way. So everybody is trying their best to make it work. And if you are with me on this, you can just tell us in the chat, yes, it's true. I'm trying just use 2 seconds to vent about how you are feeling about the way the cost of living in Nigeria has gone up. But bigger than that is I sit with families every day. Guess what? I sit with siblings because siblings know how to manage each other. You know how it is now with us siblings. Your sister, you guys, everybody knows everybody. So usually what happens with siblings who are together and are managing family assets together, siblings who have perhaps lost their parents, right? And are managing family assets together, managing their fathers or mothers and mothers' real estate, managing the cash. And we have some of them on this call, is that your senior brother, maybe that's the person that makes the decision on the funds. These are the ones that work together. There's a member of the family that will make decisions on how to negotiate on your family investment. Why? Because that person is a banker or worked in a financial institution before, even if they were not in banking. Niger style, as I call it. And there will be somebody that manages the real estate, probably the most aggressive, that can follow up with everybody on the rent. But you have shared the work subconsciously, because every family that stays together has an unspoken natural governance. They have a way that they manage each other. But for every family that stays together, where you are siblings and you are managing daddy and mommy who have gone to glorious assets, and you are either in your maybe 30s to 40s or 40s to 50s, or even the ones that we usually deal with, you are in your 60s to 70s. I ask them this question: how many of your children know where all the assets are? Guess what? I wish you could take a poll and you could guess how many people's answer was, yes, my children know. And how many were no? Oh my goodness, I have 4 children. None of them have a clue that where our dad's 10 houses in Lagos are, or where my mother's 5 properties across Nigeria are. I want you to guess on the chat how many people knew and how many people had children that knew and how many people had children that didn't know. I should drop it. I should check on the chat. So you can imagine, I'm seeing people say, oh, the cost of living has gone up and everything. But I want you to even try and take a guess on how many people's children knew. 1 in 5, 50%. Thank you. In fact, that 50%, you are being nice. It's usually like 1 in 10 that their children actually knew that this is where all grandpa and grandma's assets were. So for a lot of us that manage family assets, we don't know. We're talking about living legacy here. We've not brought our children into the fold. We can't blame you. Do you know why? Which one of your children will sit with the family discussion? That day, can they even sit? Do they even understand? For example, somebody said, I have a 2-year-old. The 2-year-old cannot understand now. And then for those that are 15, they're busy trying to write IGCSE and all those exams, right? So how would they understand? They don't know now. Do you understand? But what we have come to tell you today is that it is something that if you own a business, you need to start thinking about. If you are family and you are siblings and you hold assets together, you need to start thinking about it. If you inherited assets from your parents and you are holding on to it, and because this is real talk, you are the wife, the husband does not know how many assets that we are talking, we are laying it, we want to be practical and real. He doesn't know the total number of assets that you inherited from your parents. Or you are the husband and your wife does not know, I will pretend like I'm not looking at people, the amount of assets that you inherited from your parents, and you don't want them to know. But somebody needs to know. Because guess what? If nobody knows, those assets will disappear. So only 3% of families globally are able to move their wealth to the 4th generation. By the time it gets to cousins, it usually collapses. Do you know why? I would have said we should guess if this was a face-to-face interaction, but I'll tell you why. As much as you and your siblings love or hate each other, depending on how you've been brought up and how you interact, each child has a partner, husband or wife, and with that partner, they form a new family culture. So every single cousin unit has a different family culture. So I know you love your nephews and your nieces. They are like your own, but guess what? They still grew up in a different home from you, from your children. And therefore, no matter how close they are, there will still be quite a number of things that will be different between your children and your siblings' children. And it is those subtle differences that lead to the collapse that you can see in generation 3. The question now is, how do we solve this problem? And I'm going to run very fast now. My slide keeps taking a few seconds to move. I really wonder why. Oh no, now it's hanging. Hanging again. It must be the network. Excuse me.
Shall we just take, hi, Ope.
Hi.
So while you sort that out, shall we just maybe go through some comments?
Please go through the comments while I sort that out.
Okay, so someone says, or someone says, when you talked about children knowing where family assets are located, he says Nigerians typically don't keep hard records or divulge ownership of assets to others due to some fears. And then we had another participant talk about his child at 2 years old. He can't really ascertain whether his child would want to be interested, if his child would want to be interested in the family business. So what would you say to that participant? How would he nurture his child to want to be a successor to his business in future?
Fantastic. And you know what? That question, literally, like I planned it, right? It leads into the slide we're about to start talking about now, which is
great.
the key pillars that affect wealth in families.
Fantastic.
Now, the number one thing you can see, that big, one of the biggest navy blue round circles that you can see there is viewing succession as a single event. Let me tell you how we Africans view succession. So grandpa, is called to glory. He has written his will, and everybody goes to the court and they read it, or you go to the lawyer's office, they read it, and we share everything. That is how we read. That is how we look at succession. Whereas the fact that you have shared assets does not mean that the children are interested in the assets. The fact that you have shared assets does not mean that the child has the capacity to manage the assets. The fact that you have shared assets does not mean that that child is not going to squander those assets. And we have many families in Nigeria who were so popular, and we will not call names because I think it hurts when you think about it, and had so many assets. And in fact, if you remember some of those families, you can drop the names of those companies in the chat, who had huge assets. They were all over the place 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and all those assets are gone. As in, when I mean gone, 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 gone. It is because the owner of that, the patriarch or the matriarch of that family saw succession as a single event. Whereas succession, leaving a legacy, is a journey. It's a mental journey, it's an emotional journey, and it's a journey that you start very, very early. You start it when you're teaching your children how to manage money. You start it when you're removing the sense of entitlement from your children. You start it when you're teaching your children how to nurture relationships, right? You start it when you're teaching your children how to manage assets. So every single time you teach your child something about wealth, you are actually teaching succession. The second thing that I want to talk about, and this would apply more to the older people on the call, is playing favorites. And oh, I've seen this so many times. That is why I asked if we had children that were interested in our assets and playing favorites. So I have seen parents, and sometimes you can't blame them. You know, there's that child that just knows how to make you smile. I'll give you an example of someone I know personally. When she's around, when she was in school, when she comes back for the holidays, she would make lunch and take it to her dad in his office every single day. If she's in this country, she is carrying her lunch. She'll call her dad and say, "Daddy, what do you want to eat?" No, we're being real, we're being practical. And when her dad says, "Oh, I want this," she would make it and she would take it herself with a beautiful basket, well laid, you know, to bring it to the office. When she'll take it home. Now, I know that particular young lady, there was nothing, and all the men on this call would probably agree with me. She asked daddy for that she never used to get. "Daddy, I need extra money." My daughter needs money. My daughter, because she just had it. You know, she had a way of touching daddy's heart. You know, she looked after daddies like her brothers who really didn't care. So daddy loved, you know, her and loved, you know, everything. And she was doing well in school. She was ticking all the Nigerian boxes. She was doing well in school. She was looking after daddy. She was the daughter they could send on an errand. So for them, it was a no-brainer. It was obvious she was a favorite. Playing favorites is one of the most destructive dynamics in family succession. So I know that people don't love their kids equally. If I say that they do, people say they do, but we all know if you're a parent here and you have more than one child, that there always sometimes seems to be one that just gets you, right? The people that have older children would probably be able to understand and resonate. And if I am telling the truth, please drop it in the chat box. That, yes, it's true. You know, there's always that one, that girl, that boy that just, you know, just makes your, let me say it in Nigerian colloquial English, makes your head swell. Has all A's, valedictorian, and every time you think about the child, you're just, that's my child. I see, you can beat your chest. You know, but playing favorites will destroy your family. Because what happens when you play favorites is that your other children disengage emotionally from the family. So I know you love that child, but if you really want to transfer wealth from generation to generation, you cannot play favorites. The next one I will talk about, because of time, we could literally spend a whole webinar taking each of these points and breaking them down and having interactions about how to handle them, right? Is resisting change, the patriarch or the matriarch resisting change. And I will emphasize this with a story. One of the young Nigerians who is doing really, really well in business had to buy some fixed assets to leverage, to pivot his business to the next level. And he bought it at rock bottom, as in it was so good assets, really good assets at rock bottom prices. And he had to ask the agents that was selling the assets, why is this thing so cheap? Is that something, you know how we are as Nigerians? Is there something I don't know about these assets? Oh my goodness. And the man said, the owner of the assets, his children, all do not live in Nigeria. Therefore, they asked their uncle to help them dispose of the assets. Thank God they had a good uncle who gave it to the agent, who said, and they said, just sell it. This is more than 40 years, in fact, almost 50 years of work for their father. Just sell it, because they were all living in America and the UK, and none of them was going to come back to Nigeria, doing very well in there. Well, just sell it. Just sell it anyhow. That was not even just sell it anyhow. And the man said, so we're selling it. And the man and the business person talking shook his head and he said, oh, they could have done an M&A. You know, they could have done it because it was a major asset in billions. So they could have done a merger and acquisition and kept their family business name. Papa could have sold those assets before he died. He could have sold his company himself. He could have decided, in fact, I should drop in the chat, how many people would sell their company? Because Nigerians, they like to hold on to stuff. Because we're talking about patriarchs and matriarchs resisting change. If you think that would you sell your company, yes or no? Drop your answer in the chat. So Papa could have sold his company himself. Since he had thought about it and said, these children are not coming back, he could have sold his company and he would have been happy with who he was selling it to. There were so many options. But because he'd won, thought succession was a single event. Two, thought that maybe he thought one child would change their mind. I don't understand. But guess what? His sweat was sold for a pittance of what it was worth. So whether your child is 2 years old, or your child is 25, or your child is 45, it becomes very critical that you start to think, while you are hustling the hustle and doing the business and planning for retirement, it becomes critical that you start to think, who is going to inherit this business? And there are so many options. So it's not only your family member that must inherit. The options are, they're so varied. But if you don't think about it, you don't even start to process what will happen. And FCMB really, really wants to be looking after businesses for 3-4 generations. They want to say, oh, this man started his business with us. His son took over the business when our MD, our 14th MD, and then when our 22nd MD was there, we are now in the 3rd generation, and now with our 35th, they want to have that story, which is part of why they want to walk that journey. They want to say, oh, this person started his business with us and built assets to this extent. And now his children are working together and they're taking the assets. I can see it multiplying. He started as a average person, became a HNI. His children have moved him to UHNI. Now they are conglomerate owners. That is why we're having this conversation. So my question to you is, who, how, and what do you do to make sure that your family, because it might seem far now, I say to people, but you know what happens when you're 65 or 70, or let me even throw a spanner in the wheel. Special needs kids. You have a special needs child that you need to provide for, or a child with disability that cannot operate at the same level as the other siblings. Or more real, that and I say this with all reality because we are being real here. I've sat with families that have said to me, I have 4 children. 3 are behaving okay. This one, I don't understand. We've helped him set up businesses like 3 times. And please, if you know anybody like this, you can just drop in the chat. Yes, it's true. Yes, it's true. It's true. It is true. We've helped him set up businesses 3 times. We've given him money to help to build assets. he told us this time it was Barbie, we gave money. He came to me and said that he wants to do now his shop in Alaba. I gave money. Now, he just refuses to do well. And everybody else is doing well. And they grew up in the same house. And we have grandparents puffing out money to pay school fees for the third generation. We have grandparents looking and saying, I don't want these children to be going to St. Saviour's. And then these one's children will be going to Ajegule Primary School. And when I ask him or her, why are your children going to this school? Say, Daddy, I don't have money. This one's children will say that they are traveling. Then this one will say, we cannot even go to Ibadan. Daddy, things are tight. So we have grandparents going out of their way to cough out money from their own pocket to send their grandchildren to the best schools. Why? Because they want their grandchildren to have an equal playing field. Now, I know that people have different and varied opinions about supporting education, and I will leave the trustee guys to talk to you about that and how you can support education or support health. I mean, we've seen people whose children or even grandchildren, God forbid, have accidents and have to be looked after. And what has happened is, you see grandparents coughing out a lot of money because the parents cannot sustain looking after those children. Remember, we are talking about real life. I did not come here to speak theory. I came here to provide practical tips that can help everybody. Things that we see on a day-to-day, either in our own lives, even if we do not want to show that it's happening. You know how we all cover up, or in other people's lives. So the question becomes, when you are building this generational wealth, and I'm literally at my second to the last slide, so we're rounding off now. Who do you select? For those that have children that are already grown and you are retiring, or you're pre-retired, or you're just tired of running the business. The question is, who is available? You know, I was asking how many children are interested in your business? Who is willing and who is interested? Because guess what? If you don't have anybody that is available, that is willing or is interested, then you have to start thinking of other measures. There is no use living in the world of maybe these children, they will change their mind. I would tell them, I tell my clients, let's sit down and face the reality. Daddy, bros, uncle, who is available? Are these children interested? Talk to them when next time you go on holiday. And for those that have children that are young, the process of being interested is an emotional journey that you start from when they are young. So if your children have not been inculcated, and that is not part of this presentation, that in itself is another journey entirely, inculcated into running and being emotionally attached to your business, they will not be interested. If they never, I'll give you an example. I know someone that said how they took over their mom's business. They're in the fashion industry. They worked every holiday, they worked in their mother's business, every single holiday, not excluding one. When she passed on, her passing on was sudden. I think somebody was 21, somebody was 25, and they had siblings that were in their teens. When she passed on, their 25-year-old picked up the business. They have turned that business into a multi-billion naira business. But they would never have been able to do that if they had not been involved. So your child might be 5, your child might be 7, your child might be 12. But if you have never, you know how we do, we're different from our parents. Well, some people are different from their parents. You know, back in the day, they would say, you're following me to the office. Nowadays, we say we want our children to do other things, right? Which is good. It is good. But at the same time, because a lot of times they will end up not living in this country by the time they're getting to university age. Because I'm talking to premium banking and private banking clients. So I know the niche. So I'm aware that that is the reality. So you can imagine. Now, quickly, how do you even select? This applies to the third generation. So your children, we've already spoken about it, they'll be 5. They have an unspoken governor, they know how they manage one another. But by the time it's getting to your grandchildren, you have 3 children, they have 4 children. How do you select who is going to sit together to agree on what to do? Because now you have 12 people. Those 12 people are going to become maybe 36, maybe 48, maybe 24. So it becomes important that you sit down and start to decide how people do things together. And guess what? I want to say this because I know I have a lot of business people on this call. Part of how your business pivots, proven through research, from level to level, is structure. If you get your business to a particular level and you don't tighten the ropes of structure, which is what bankers ask for when they ask for your audited financials, they look at your organogram, they're looking for structure. Your business is not able to scale. Guess what? It's the same thing with your assets. If you do not put structure in your wealth, as to say, if third generation, if you are going to sit on the board, in case you are sitting on a board now, as in, and I want you to represent our family, you need to have some level of this. I have clients that say to me, if they say, look, any child that does not, I have a client that said, interestingly, any child that does not have a degree cannot inherit my assets. And we have to put it in their trust deed. They'll talk about trust later. Put it in the family constitution that was in the trust deed. Any child that does not go to university, you can, after you go and do music, you can do it, but you must have a first degree for you to inherit my assets. I have a client that says that I don't want to indulge my children. I will only pay 50% of your child's university fees. The other 50%, go and look for it for yourselves. Because I don't want to indulge you. So there are so many ways you can manage assets. And I'll just run through them quickly based on everything we've said. And I'm closing now. You need to start thinking about succession early. You need to share your dreams with your children. And you need to understand that as you are building that business, I know that it might seem like irritating, it might even seem far now. But remember, what you cannot see far, you cannot build. Everybody that has ever gone from good to great did it because they saw far. I say to people, and I'll give you a classic example of the mistakes that Nigerians made. When MTN was doing their initial IPO, there was 10 million, there was a $10 million bucket, there was a $1 million bucket, and I think later there was a 250, there was 100. Now, whether you're in the 1 million, 250, 100, 10 million, wherever you sit in that bucket space, you, as the Patriarch of Matriarch, had $100,000 you could use to buy MTN shares. Well, usually, let me tell you what Nigerians do. Why we say put structure. When they pass on, they now take that $100,000 and give it and divide it into four. What happens is each child now has $25,000, right? Well, guess what? When that $100,000 opportunity comes, none of those children can take advantage of that opportunity because suddenly their capacity to pivot in wealth has been diminished. And every businessman on this call, every investor on this call knows that one of the ways you grow is by having capacity, because opportunities don't wait for people. So a lot of wealthy people will tell you, oh, my friend was going to sell real estate. He was in a crisis. He said, can you give me the money now? I need to sell this. I need 60 million. I need 40 million now. It is the person that can bring the 40 million. And I'm saying this from my private wealth background, that buys an asset that might have been worth 120 million. But while rest you could have had 40 million, by the time you write your will and divide it into 4, each of your children has 10 million. And all of a sudden, none of them can acquire that asset. But if you had sat down and put in structure, put in decision-making structures and said, this is how we will make decisions in this family. Concerning this wealth, this is how we will do this, this is how we will do that. What will usually happen is those children will be able to take that wealth and pivot to the next level. Now, children are also different because we're talking about real life. And people that have children that are in their late teens, that are adults, know what I'm talking about, probably more than the ones that have children, right? As in, children are different. You can have a child that is extremely entrepreneurial. If you give that child 10 naira, and you know, right, as I'm talking, you're thinking about your children. That child is going to make you 100 naira. Whereas you have the one that if you give him 10 naira, he's going to go and put it in an account, fixed deposit. And you have the one that if you give 10 naira, he's going to go and buy new shoes, belt, bag, clothes, and then before you know it, you're saying, what happened to your money? Children are different, even when you teach them about wealth. And sometimes parents say to me, am I going to leave my grandchildren to the strength and the capacities of my child? What if my child doesn't do well? These are things that people think about in their 70s and their 80s. What if this child suddenly has a crisis? Although I sent him to Harvard, what if he cannot send my grandchildren to Harvard? What if he's now on local? Hey. So they start doing things like education trust. I leave it outside. I take it out of your hold. I want every generation to have a playing field. And then, as I round up, there are people that are very, very passionate about philanthropy. And you can deploy the last poll as I close, Onyi. Very, very passionate about philanthropy. They believe there are people who grew up with single parents, and they would rather use some of their wealth to fund and help people. There are people who know that if it wasn't for that uncle that helped you, you will never be where you are today. So you want to help somebody else. And there are people on this call who really, really want to help that brilliant child go to school. But the question is, and there are people on this call that you know how much you spend every single month on other people. My colleagues abroad, when I talk to them, when we have meetings, when we have seminars, they never understand the African culture or the Asia Pacific or the Indians, the Arabic culture, we in that region where we help so many people. And if I'm telling the truth, you can drop it in the chat, that is true. Some people have a long list. At the end of every month, they have a very long list of people they pay school fees. It's like they even send the list to their private banker and say 10 people for school fees, 3 people for house maintenance, 7 people, and they have this long list. And I have people sit with me and ask questions like, my auntie, my cousin's mom, who stayed with us when we were young, she's in her 80s now, she's 85, 87. If something should happen to me, I'm not sure these children will look after her. How do I make sure that things are put in place for her? Because I don't want her to suffer. So part of how you make sure, and I saw that, thank you, that philanthropy stays is by putting structure. So as I round up and I close with this, FCMB, KPMG are very, very passionate about making sure that after you have worked this hard, and you have worked hard, and you continue to work hard, you are not 85 or 75 or 65 or 60. And 1, none of your children are here. 2, none of them are interested in managing your wealth. 3, all those, we all have those interesting family members that are just waiting for somebody to die for them to take over the wealth. 4, your father's wealth that he struggled so hard to build, all of them will now just take it away. All those, and the relatives will squander it. 6, you don't want to pass to children that are not interested. 7, if you are going to make a decision, you want to make it now. Because like John Maxwell said, a leader's lasting value is measured by succession. It is not measured by necessarily how wealthy you were when you were alive. It is measured by how well your generations live your values, live your ethos, build upon the relationships you left them, and build upon the wealth that you left them. On this note, I hope I've been able to help somebody, because that is why I'm running such a tight schedule today, but I had to be here because I'm very passionate about this. Think about, even if you cannot, start thinking about building a legacy for your family. Thank you very, very much. That's my presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Opa. It was really insightful. We have a lot of comments in the chat box and a lot of questions as well. So let's start with that. I mean, you made reference to favoritism, sibling rivalry and all that. And you also talked about selling your company if your children are not interested. But let's get to the questions for some, to elaborate on those. So a couple of our participants do agree with you when you say, you know what, sell your company if your children are not interested. And a couple of them are very, very emphatic about not selling. Some say they would never sell. Some actually say they never actually thought about it. They never thought that it was an option, being that they just assume that, you know what, this is my business. My child has to take over after I'm gone. So yes, there's that. Then somebody says, this seminar is for the rich, let the poor breathe. I do want to say that there isn't a specific amount of wealth or financial resource that is tied to generational wealth. It's really all about creating financial resources for the next generation. It's not for large businesses or huge conglomerates. It starts now, really. Ope, do you have can you kind of tailor down, maybe layer this topic so that it resonates to, perhaps some, middle income or bands? Okay.
I'm muted. Oh, apologies.
Oh, okay.
I just unmuted. There are questions. When I speak about this, people usually think a lot of times that it is the extremely wealthy.
Exactly.
But guess what happens to the middle income people? You struggle hard to build your one house, right? And sometimes two. And then you have these dollars that you have to put in your account. Then you have all these people that are depending on you that you're trying to help. After you've sent those children abroad for hundreds of thousands of dollars, guess what? Yes, you're middle income, but you know that is your desire. 20 years, 15 years down the line, who is going to look after your house? Do you know? And let me even speak to this is very common. The Igbo people on this call will understand. How many times have you passed that very wealthy man's house? And right now it's covered with, the compound is covered with grass. The roof is leaking. And sometimes you're even the one calling the daughter, I just passed your dad's house. I didn't even see security. And the daughter is saying, oh my God, from London. Oh my God, there's we put one uncle there. Oh. We give him money every month. Oh, I don't know what he's doing. Oh, and then they're trying to find somebody, one family member, to go and find out what's going on. Sometimes he's not the most wealthy. Your one house, your two houses that you did and sweated so much to build, those shares that you bought, and that small cash that is in your account. After you have sent your children to school abroad and done like this, is it that far cousin that is now going to come and inherit your house? Because your children don't want to come back to Nigeria. So while you are not the super rich that has 15 properties, you still built your house. It's your work, it's your sweat. Are you just going to leave it? It's worth thinking about. So whether you're super wealthy or you are not, it is still important that you think about how to plan for the next generation. Thank you. I hope I was able to help.
Yes, great. Okay, so someone wants to know, how do you handle succession planning with a joint business? Let me just scroll to that question. How do I, wait, just give me a minute. Okay, how do I handle a joint partnership business to my children?
Okay, so when it comes to joint, so if I were to answer this question, you actually should be paying me. But I will answer because it's FCMB. When it at KPMG is very interested in families building for generations. So when it's a joint partnership, in a joint partnership, there's a partner's agreement or there's a deed. There's a way you have agreed for the business to run. Now, there are two things. It is either you actually cash out your partnership, which people have done. At the end of time, you actually say, oh, this partnership, we will value it, and whatever it's worth, I want you to give it to my children, because none of them, in fact, let me drill it down. You're working in a law firm and you're a partner in a law firm, right? None of your children are lawyers, classic case. Now you built that law firm from scratch. Well, guess what? when that person is called to glory many, many years from now, none of the children are lawyers, none of the children. So what do most people do? They will value the business and cash out their children. But they would have stated clearly that this is what we want. Otherwise, what usually happens is the children don't even know what to do. But if you've thought about succession as we are discussing it now, you start to think just like you are thinking right now, and that's awesome. That how do I do this? Okay, if my children are interested, do I want to bring them into the partnership from an early age? If they're not interested, like remember who is willing, who is available, who is interested, then do I take out? Do you understand? Do I cash out that partnership?
Mm-hmm.
Do I ask for there to be evaluation? And then when they get the wealth, do I work with FCMB trustees to put it together in such a way that the wealth can be disseminated for my desires for generations to come?
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ope. Okay, so I'll just go through the comments. A lot of people are very, very happy about this session. Thank you to the hosts and organizers, very informative and educative session. You have given practical examples. This is an open-minded seminar. Thank you all so much for your kind comments. Thank you so much, Ms. Opeyemi. What a wonderful presentation. That's beautiful. Okay, so we do have another question. So someone says, he's anonymous, how do I plan for a family business as a single guy? I am not yet married. So I think here it's just about putting structures in place right now. So what would you advise him? Okay.
So you're not yet married. It doesn't, what you're thinking right now is how do you plan for your business? So what we tell them is, what we tell people that are not married but have big businesses is, what do you want to do with that business? If you never get married, who do you want to inherit the business? At what age, if you never get married, do you want to sell? That is why when we started, I said, one of the things that I said is it's an emotional journey. Because for a lot of people, we now start asking the tough questions, right? And when you do get married, if you do get married, you now start asking, when do I start preparing my children? Because you've had this webinar. From when they are young, you start putting things together. You're going to go to wealth seminars. I'm taking you to the business with me. You understand? If you are interested in handing over to your children. If not, guess what? Do you know that you can actually bring in people to run your business and get other people to sit on the board of your business? And the wealth of your business can be used for your philanthropy and things that you're passionate about. Your wealth does not necessarily have to pass on to your children. So when we talk about building a legacy, well, that's why I mentioned philanthropy. It is not only in terms of passing on to your children. Sometimes you can actually say, you know what, this wealth is going to help widows. Any widow that cannot do, that is what I want to use my money for. And that is literally what you would do. So those are ideas, but there's so many options, but I just thought to put one or two on the table. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ope. Thank you so much, Ope. I think so that pretty much would be it. A lot of the questions have already been answered in one form or the other.
Oh, I see some very practical questions here. I just saw a very...
Yeah, but some of them are tailored to FCMB trustees. So I'll just save that for the second part of for the second part of the discussion. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you, FCMB.
Yes. Thank you so much, Ope. I mean, it was really, really insightful. It was really interesting. I know there's a whole lot more that we could talk about, but we're pressed for time. So yes. So we'll be moving on to the second part of this discussion with FCMB trustees. At Premium Banking, we offer free consultation services for our premium customers with FCMB trustees regarding their estate planning, management, writing a will, and trust administrative services. So without further ado, I would introduce our next speaker, Ms. Jemima Ola Awaipo. She manages the private trust services with FCMB Trustees, a subsidiary of FCMB Group. She attended the Obafemi Awolowo University, where she obtained her Bachelor of Law degree. So, Jemima, thank you. Thank you for joining us. I'll just hand over to you right now.
Hi, Oyi. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jemima Ola-Owaiko. And Ms. Okwe, thank you so much for your session. That was very, very insightful. And I really hope everyone here has learned one or two things and will be able to act on it. So I'll be sharing my screen now. Okay. So Oyi, is that screen can you see my screen, please?
No, not yet.
How about now?
No. But you know what? Perhaps just speak to it.
Okay. I'll do that instead. So everyone, we at FCMB Trustees, we offer private trust services and corporate trust services. But today we're going to be talking about estate planning as a tool for wealth preservation. This webinar basically talks to us about how we can build generational wealth. And one of the key ways we can do that is by having an estate plan. Now, in Nigeria, we have a couple of ways that tools that we can use to plan our estate. One of which is wills. I'm very sure many people know about wills, and I saw a couple of questions in the Q&A about how some parents die without writing their wills, or some people have properties without their children knowing about it, or without letting their children be the ones to inherit it. So wills is one of the ways, is a document where you can use to distribute your wealth, your assets. And may I state that your assets involves everything you own, be it your houses, your businesses, your cars, your investments, your mutual funds. And in this age of digital currencies, things like cryptocurrency, Ethereum, blockchains, and all of that includes part of your includes your assets, which you can will out to your beneficiaries. Another planning tool we have is a deed of gift. So a deed of gift is wherein you just voluntarily transfer a property to another individual. There is no money involved in this exchange, and it takes effect immediately, while a will takes effect upon the death of the testator. And another service we offer is trust. So we have the living trust, we have the education trust, as well as the testamentary trust that we offer in FCMB Trustees. So a living trust basically is a legal contract or relationship which is bound by a trust deed, and wherein the settlor, that is the person who owns the asset, transfers his asset to a legal entity, a trustee. So in this case, for example, FCMB Trustees, for the benefit of a beneficiary. So we have a living trust where you can transfer your asset to FCMB Trustees, for example, where we manage your assets, and what is involved, what is contained in your trust deed, we manage it. You tell us, you give us instructions on what to do with your assets. If it is to pay someone, pay your beneficiary, even yourself, we do that from time to time. We also offer an educational trust plan, which is a savings trust managed and administered by us for the benefit of a named beneficiary. So basically, this is for parents who have children in school, where you open an educational trust plan with us. We build up, you put in money in the account, and we get to be the ones to pay the schools directly. So for example, I'm aware that 2022-2023 school sessions for primary and secondary schools are about rounding up, and 2023-2024 sessions will soon begin. September, school fees will come. What happens? If you have an educational trust plan and there's fund inside, by September, you text us or you send us a mail. Hi Jemima, please, this is the invoice from my son's school. Can you please pay so amount to the school. So we do that. But that can only be done if you have an educational trust plan and the money in it is enough to pay the school fees. So we also have the testamentary trust, which is a legal and fiduciary relationship created through explicit instruction in a deceased will. It goes into effect after the death of the settlor, and it is commonly used when someone wants to leave assets for a beneficiary but does not want the beneficiary to receive those assets until a specified time. So these are some of the services that we offer at FCMB Trustees. Um, we also have our fees for wills, for example. I know somebody in the comment section talked about, oh, let the rich breathe. Estate planning is not just for the rich. So far you are working, you have assets. And as I mentioned earlier, your assets include your bank account, your employment benefits, your RSA pension, and all of that. And I'm very sure almost everybody on this call have one or two of those things I mentioned. So it's not just for the rich, and we offer these services to everyone. So at FCMB Trustees, we have the simple will, the premium will, and the comprehensive will. For the simple will, if you have a bank account, that your GT account, your FCMB account, your Providus account, your employment benefits, your pensions, be it with Stanbic IBTC, FCMB pensions, whichever pension fund administrator, we can get you a will with what you have. And we also have a premium will, that is for those whose asset value is 25 million and below. So aside from bank accounts and pensions I mentioned earlier, if you have real estate, that your one house that you have or two houses that you've been able to build, your shares in Dangote Cement, in Zenith Bank, in MTN, your life insurance, your investment, your mutual funds, your money, legacy money markets, and all of that. With that, you can get a premium will. While for a comprehensive will, for those whose asset value is over 25 million naira, these are the will services that we offer. So it is not just for the rich, everybody can do that. While for our living trust, which includes having the engagement fee and the trust deed, the establishment fee is 300,000, while our annual fee is 250,000. Then for the testamentary trust, most times the testator, that is the person who has the trust, often leaves an instruction that will pay my beneficiary this so amount for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years. So we always have to work for that particular estate. So that is also offered. And for the education trust, I mentioned earlier, I gave the example of schools opening very soon. When if you have an education trust with us, we pay the school fees directly to the school, and you can make payments regularly. So I have a scenario I use wherein I have nieces and nephews where I may want to give my niece money, and I tell my brother, oh, send me just your daughter's account number, and I send it to him. Then sometimes I went visit and I realize my brother is actually spending the money. He takes the girl's ATM card and withdraws out of it. But with an education trust, you can't do that. You don't have access to the money. It's only FCMB trustees that can. You can give us an instruction to pay the school fees for your child. So there is no disruption in the child's education. But note that if you start, this is today is June 22nd. So for example, if you start today, you will not be able to make withdrawal until June 21 next year. So withdrawals are not allowed in the first 1 year, and that is because we don't just leave the money idle. We ensure that we invest the money. And as you know, FCMB is a group. We have subsidiaries, we have sister companies like FCMB Asset Management. So we invest the monies in with FCMB management. We put it in low risk investment so that the money doesn't just lie fallow, and it can yield interest. And also, third parties are prohibited from having access to these funds. So it's just FCMB trustees that can do that. So we at FCMB trustees, we are professionals. We know what we are doing. We are impartial in making investment decisions, and our clients' interest is first with us. So we would like you to reach out to us. We are at second floor Primrose Tower, 1780 Mimbu Street, Lagos. My email address is jemima.olawaiko@fcmb.com. That is Jemima, JEMIMAH.ola hyphen awaiko, AWAIKO at fcmb.com, and FCMB trustees at fcmb.com. So we're really glad that you all were able to join our webinar. And I want you to have this quote in mind by Alan Leikin that said, planning is bringing the future into the present so you can do something about it now. As you're acquiring your wealth, you can also plan for it. 2020 is just 3 years away, and we remember how the COVID happened and all of that. People die, things happen every day. So it is very imperative for us all to plan for our beneficiaries and to also remember that as we are acquiring our wealth, as we're acquiring our assets, we also have to plan and transfer generational wealth up onto the fourth generation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jemima. That was very detailed. Okay, so we do have some questions. We do have some questions very quickly because we're running out of time. So, I mean, someone mentions majority of Nigerians died without wills. I mean, you did speak to that. So I just thought to put that out there. And then there's, okay. Hang on. So someone asked a question about in-laws. When in-laws swoop in and try to take everything that you have, how do you mitigate against that? How would you advise that person right now?
Sorry, I didn't get that, please.
Okay, so someone mentioned, okay, I'm trying to look for the question, but I mean, I did read it. So she says that, okay, so her husband is no more, and now the in-laws have swooped in to pretty much take up all the property. So how would you advise her? What should be her next step?
It depends. How did her husband die? Did he have a will? Did he have an estate plan? If he did not, and he died intestate, she as a beneficiary, that is her being the wife, is the only one entitled to get a letter of administration in order for her to access maybe his employment benefits and his pensions. So she can reach out to us at FCMB trustees, or she can hire a lawyer to be able to protect her.
Okay. Do you want to perhaps maybe drop in your email in the chat box? Because I do have a lot of comments here requesting for contacts. Exactly, contacts for. Okay, thank you. So where your assets are only properties, probably one or two houses, how can this be managed for generations to come under trusteeship? Those assets could be the opportunity for the properties to increase under proper management by trusteeship. I think he's pretty much asking how to manage assets under a trustee, property specifically.
Okay, to manage assets to manage real estate under the trusteeship, if the person approaches us, we get to have a trustee. I mentioned that earlier, and it depends on the scope he wants us to. So if he wants us to be the one managing the property entirely, maybe tenancy, rent, and all of that, we can also do that. But that is limited. That is his instruction or whatever is included in the trust deed. And he said something about how it can lead to generational wealth. If you have houses, this is Lagos, rent is expensive. So if you have assets like that is generating income yearly or biannually, as the case may be, that's something that can set your children right on the right path for their future.
Okay. Someone wants to know how much yield they would get on the education trust fund.
Okay, as I mentioned earlier, we invest in legacy money market basically, and the rate fluctuates. So if I give you a rate today, it might not be the rate tomorrow. But one thing is rest assured, we don't leave your money lying idle. It doesn't. If you put 100,000 today, by next year, doesn't mean that it is not the 100,000 you're going to need. So I cannot give a guarantee on the interest rate because it fluctuates.
Okay. So I have another question. Olufunsho wants to know if he can write a will against the retired savings accounts.
Yes, I mentioned that retired savings account. I'm guessing that's a retirement savings account. So yeah, it's part of the assets or estate I defined when I was speaking. You can have that in your will.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Jemima. Then we'll have a lot of people requesting contact, so just comment and share. So for those that are asking about the recordings, it will be shared after, we'll do some editing and the rest of it and then share it. This topic certainly has invited us to reimagine the way we do our business and plan our lives. It's been such an illuminating experience for me, and I hope it has been for you too as well. We are delighted for the interaction through your chats and your questions. It's been really quite engaging, and please trust that FCMB is paying attention. So if you have any further inquiries, please do send them to premiumbanking@fcmb.com, and we will get your feedback soon enough. I don't know if Ope would want to have a quick note. Ope? Okay, perhaps there's a bit of a network glitch. But yes, I do want to thank our speakers, Ope. I do want to thank Jemima and our wonderful audience. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and please enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.